stride malalignment is one of the most common things we see, especially in younger athletes or athletes who don't access the correct arm position at the correct time in the throw. So a lot of times we'll see a step across the body. I see that a lot more commonly than the dreaded stepping in the bucket. Everyone talks about stepping in the bucket, and I see it from time to time, but I work with hundreds of throwing athletes, and I don't see it all that often. I would say that if somebody was stepping in the wrong direction, out of 10 times, 9 times, they'd be stepping across their body. We know from the literature, we know from the studies, that at this point, we basically want to see within 3 inches. I'll make it easy on people, 3 inches. If you're taller, 6'4", we say 10 centimeters in the research. Really, we're looking at almost 4 inches at that point on either side of your foot. But then we're talking about, okay, younger guys, young kids, maybe it's only 2 inches. You know, they're 4'7". They're 5'2". Maybe the distance is a little shorter. And what we're kind of talking about here is if we took our foot and we'll use this mat here. This mat's a perfectly straight line. So if we put that foot, what we call mid-navicular bone, which is basically the middle of my foot here. So the navicular bone, small bone inside the foot, we kind of line it up there, or basically at the middle of your arch. So if you're at home, the middle of your arch. What we're looking at is a line. If we've got this perpendicular to our foot here, we've got a line going forward. Now when I stride, I've got to be within 3 inches of that line. If I'm 8 inches across or way over here, I'm not in a position that would be potentially the most efficient position, and it may even potentially be detrimental or catastrophic. So sometimes people step a little open, a little closed, and it's perfectly okay based on their individual anatomy and how they sequence the rest of the throw. Often, however, and we'll see guys like that, like Jake Arrieta steps across his body. I still think he's probably all right with that step across because he does so many other things so well. The majority of us, unfortunately, do not have the genetic gifts that individuals like Jake Arrieta have, and we're going to have to do things a little more efficiently to get to that same point. So if we think mid-navicular bone, mid-arch, straight line to the target, I got 3 inches on either side of that line to stride. And we'll see guys where they step, and if you watch them from straight posterior, straight behind, what you see is when you watch the video and they step across, you'll see this angle where the leg is angled through the follow-through, where they are coming across because their center of mass is trying to get towards the target. Now, if they stride open, we can sometimes see that if they deviate a lot. But really, if we look from straight posterior, you got to be right behind, and you see a foot on the inside, they're probably striding across. And if you see a foot way out here on the outside, they're probably opening up their stride. So we know, hey, we got to be within approximately 3 inches. How can we start to work on that? Well, we can tell somebody, hey, stride straighter. And that will work maybe 10% of the time. The easiest little cue that we use a lot to get individuals to stride straighter is we actually give them a visual feedback. Now, everybody's seen a T painted on the ground, and that's fine. But the body responds and the brain responds really well when there's an object, because historically, if we step on things, it's not going to be good for our health and longevity. And what I'm talking about here is if you're running around barefoot, caveman's running around barefoot, and he's stepping on pebbles and sharp objects, that's probably not going to help him be an effective member of his tribe community. Just like, hey, you're walking around in your yard, you're going to be very careful and conscientious about your step. Well, when something's there, we have kind of some automatic loops in our neurology that are going to lead to us not wanting to step on something. When it's just a painted line on the ground, our body looks at that as, hey, that's just the floor, or that's just the ground, I'm not going to think about it. But just a little bit of depth, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be a rug, it can be a carpet on the floor, and this is something I give to a lot of guys, so I wanted to make a video on it. Basically, what you're going to do here is we got a yoga mat here. We're going to line it up with our first MTP joint, or our first joint of our foot. Our big toe joint basically is going to line up joint right here. Basically, I tell people big toe joint or where the shoelaces end is going to line right up with the edge of that, and you're going to come back here if somebody strides across. It'd be the opposite if they stride open. Now, if they're here and they're throwing, they've got to step on this side of it. And you'll see individuals, you'll tell them 30 times, step more open, and they won't be able to do it. You put something on the ground, and all of a sudden, they don't want to step on it anymore. So, great little technique to use for our guys stepping across. Now we have a couple other options. An easy one that we use all the time is we're going to put a cuff weight on the ankle, 1-2 pounds. Little cuff weight, everybody's seen little cuff weights. Put that on the ankle and then have them do the same technique. And what happens is all of a sudden the foot's a little heavier, and to get their foot open to the target or get their body open to the target, it's become a little more difficult because it's a little heavier, meaning it's going to slow them down, means they have to work a little harder to get their foot open. So let me show you that here real quick. So now I've got my cuff weight on. You can see 2 pounds. Basically, 2 pounds will be enough for you. And I get my foot lined up, big toe joint. I'm here, and it becomes more difficult for me to get lined up with the target because this is heavy. And so it slows me down a little bit. 2 pounds is enough to give me a little bit more sense of where my limb is at in space, and I can start to throw harder, and as I throw faster, it becomes more game-like, and it becomes more like what I'm going to actually do when I get out of there on the field. But there's number 2. So then I can take this away. I can still use the weight on the foot if I want. And I'm going to look at my stride position. Now, I might see a foot that's a little closed, a little more straight. All of that can be okay depending on what we see, but really we're talking about direction and malalignment here. Those are the 2 most effective techniques that we find with athletes. In addition to that, we can leave this on, we can take it off. Generally, we're going to talk about doing, 50, 60 reps with each of those things, just to get an athlete to feel. Now I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to start backwards, and they're going to take a little hop step forward, and then they're going to have to turn and go. And so when an athlete does something like that, and they take a little hop step this way, and they got to throw that way, all of a sudden they're landing, and they have to teach themselves to open a little bit more. So now they're teaching themselves to open a little more than what they're traditionally used to. And there's 3 great techniques that you can utilize to actually get an athlete to stride in a more linear direction, more towards the target, so that they can avoid placing too much stress on the elbow or the shoulder, and eventually putting them in a position where they may end up injured or with decreased performance and accuracy over time. Get them more efficient, more linear towards the target, and get them throwing a little better with just a few little drills and techniques where they're not even going to have to be consciously thinking about it. And you can once in a while say, hey, make sure you don't land on this, make sure you're a little more straight, really power through this throw, whatever it is that clicks with that individual athlete. If you have to, 3 easy techniques, you don't even have to say anything. They're going to begin to work in the way that you want them to work to get the athlete to do what you want them to do, which is stride straighter, be more efficient, and play better, pain-free. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up if you like the video and you want to see more of this type of content, and I'll bring it to you guys. We'll see you in the next one.